This video is sponsored by GamersGalaxy.shop, your one-stop shop for all things gaming accessories. Whether it be dice, sleeves, deck boxes, binders, and more, Gamers Galaxy has all your accessory type needs. They even have a weekly deals section where each week they offer a blanket percentage off a specific product for an entire week. They accept a myriad of payment options as well as give you free shipping on orders of $75 or more. Use promo code YugiBro5 for 5% off any of your purchases when shopping with them. That's GamersGalaxy.shop.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Yugi Bros! What's going on, guys? It's Yugi Bros, and I understand I've been gone for a very long time. Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Duels was in a state where the entire game was the same format for what felt like forever. And what I mean by that is Moth was always the best deck, XYZ was the other best deck, and since their inceptions, they've never really wavered on that. Now I understand like Speed Duels was a pretty diverse meta overall, but there were a lot of problems I had with it. And the last video I was going to release and never did was going to be titled Why Zoma is the Problem Card. And Zoma the Spirit by itself kind of killed the game for me as a whole, because the whole point of most decks in Speed Duels were pretty interesting, but Zoma the Spirit would make it so that lesser decks that weren't Moth or XYZ or outside of the meta ones, right? Zoma the Spirit would just make it so that like these rogue decks that could do well would just auto lose to Zoma. It gave every other deck a second win condition through its burn effect, and it just kind of was very unhealthy for the game. In addition to that, when they errated the skills, they didn't touch XYZ. And I was kind of annoyed by that. I think that card is skillful in its own right. It makes XYZ basically play like ABC. But the problem with it was it left it unchecked while everything else was still a thing. And we never had like a limited list to make other things contend. So it just kind of felt washed out. Like the GX box itself didn't really do a whole lot outside of giving us DD Warrior Lady, to the competitive scene at least. And like Cyber Angels was a cool deck, but it just lost to the other good decks already. So I haven't made videos in a while because I've just felt like the game as a whole has been very stale. I actually went back to regular Yu-Gi-Oh, which was weird for me because I just haven't really played in the last several years. But I thought normal Yu-Gi-Oh was in a pretty nice state right now, where they're not really killing any decks every time there's a new list. They kind of just made it right now so that like 18 different decks can contend. And yes, there's only like maybe 5 or 6 decks that'll probably get you there, like over the hill. But until, of course, the release of Splight and To Your Element, you had a lot of different diverse metas. Now, where we're at now with with Power of the Elements release is neither here nor there. I think the decks are fun, but I do think there definitely needs to be a list to put those in check. Specifically, Totally Awesome needs to get banned. Splight already has just insane advantage over like most of the game. Having Totally Awesome just in the deck as well is over the top ridiculous. And To Your Element, I think obviously when the Ishizu stuff comes out in November for us, will be as insane as possible as well. By that point, I hope Winda gets banned. I know that's probably not going to happen because right now To Your Element's just not as good as Splight. But I do think To Your Element has the higher ceiling. It's just right now it's more RNG based versus Splight, which can play through just about anything. But we're here to talk about Speed Duels, not regular Yu-Gi-Oh! So they introduced a limited list for YCS Niagara. And why I think this is significant, obviously, is we've never had a ban list, limited list, any list before in Speed Duels. As well as we've had erratas to skills, but that was about it. And in my personal opinion, the erratas they made were completely unbalanced, in the sense that Cocoon was still really, really good, but they nerfed Inner Conflict to the point where it's just not playable, and Twisted Personality to a point where I'm sure it'll see play at some point, but like it's just not nearly as that. In my opinion, that's still how you errata a card. It's not unplayable, but it definitely doesn't see the amount of play that it would have. But then you took Inner Conflict and you changed not 1, not 2, but 3 different things about it. Now you pay 2,000. Now you have to take a normal summon / set monster, and now it also can't be tributed. That was too much. That was insanely too much. you didn't have to do all of that. I don't see that ever seeing play again until maybe synchros start coming out over here. And even then, 2,000 life points is half your life in the game. So I don't know. We'll see where that is when we get to that point. But the YCS Niagara list is very interesting. It functions like Duel Links. So anything that would be limit 1, you only get 1 copy of, period. Anything that's limit 2, you get 2 copies of. Can be the same 2 cards. But it could also be 2 different cards in the limit 2 section, and the limit 3 is the same, but only 3 of those options. A friend of mine made a graphic that kind of breaks it down a lot easier for people that have never been introduced to something like this before. So we have the limit 1 section in yellow, the limit 2 section in green, and the limit 3 section in blue. So basically, you use this as, you know, your guide to seeing how you build a deck. So anything in the yellow section you can only play 1 of in a deck, period. Anything in the green section you can play 2 of, period. However, it could be 2 different cards in the green section, or it could be 2 of the same cards. Obviously, you can't play 2 of the same. You can't play 2 cocoons, which is a skill, but it's basically saying if you are playing that skill, you only get 1 of these other 4 cards in your deck. If you're not playing the skill, you can choose 2 of these cards that aren't the skill. Could be 2 different ones, could be 2 of the same. You could play 2 allures, but then you're locked out of Paranoid, Hanger, and Wheel. Alternatively, you could use 1 Paranoid and 1 allure. Granted, I don't know why you're playing Paranoid if you're not playing Cocoon. So if you're playing Cocoon, you're locked into 1 Paranoid, and then you can't play Hanger, Nightmare Wheel, or Allure. It's just interesting because it kind of nerfs, well, it definitely nerfs Moth, but it also kind of nerfs the Dark Moth strat, which I understand wasn't seeing as much play as of late. I haven't played the game in a bit, so correct me if I'm wrong, and it's been a couple months. But Dark Moth used to be really, really powerful, and that played the Allure package, as well as 3 Paranoid, as well as Cocoon of Ultra Evolution. So that was definitely a good hit there. Hanger is the only thing to me on this list, well, Metaverse too, but Hanger makes 0 sense to me. I don't understand why you limit that card to 2. Once you have it and it goes off once or twice, it never needs to go off again. Scramble was the card in this deck that was the problem, the trap that summons up to 3 of your banished union. Well, it's not even banished union, it's banished light monsters, so X, Y, and Z can come back all on 1 trap card. And while in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! That doesn't sound super oppressive, in this game it is much more oppressive and keeps the decks synergizing very well. It's almost as if whoever created this list was obviously an XYZ player, because it just doesn't feel like it hit the deck at all. Metaverse is a joke. I don't understand why that's even on here. Like, if Konami's logic was, okay, so we put Hanger to 2, so now people are going to play Metaverse. Sure, they want to play Metaverse, but they can't play Book of Moon or Cosmic or Breaker or DD. I just don't see the real reason. But let's take an actual educated look through this list. I know I had a live reaction list of videos. One of my friends called me and literally was like, they released a list, but things were misspelled on it, so people were taking it for a grain of salt. And I said, okay, we'll record a video just in case it's real. And if it's not, we won't worry about it. And then we recorded the video, and afterward we were going through sources, and it didn't seem like too many people had figured it out yet. So we thought it was fake, and then I just didn't post the video until the next day when I realized, oh no, this is actually legit. So let's take a more educated look through this. And again, bear in mind, it's been a couple months since I've played. I didn't play because the format was the same thing forever. Perpetual Moth was terrible, and XYZ I feel like is just the new Perpetual Moth, and still will be through this list, but that's neither here nor there. The thing with this list that I do want to keep in mind is I understand this is only for YCS Niagara, and Konami listed specifically that these lists will only be implemented for the event they are. However, different leagues, for example, will probably implement this. I know Rook's Table has the very famous and popular Speed Duel League that will most likely implement this. I'm not sure. I actually have to ask him on that. And I hope he does, because legitimately, like, we need a shakeup. We need to see we need some new stuff. No joke. We need some new stuff, and I would like to, I don't know, I think having this type of list makes the game way more skillful than it used to be. And the way they do this, like Duel Links, for example, is very clever. I think this should honestly be how you do a limited list in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! because a lot of things didn't change. However, I do understand that this kind of caters more towards 20 card decks, because like if you limit or semi-limit, especially semi-limit, it almost absolutely changes nothing in a 20 card deck. So I do appreciate how this one actually caters towards the format a bit more. And again, I think it's a lot more skillful depending on where you're playing. It's like, oh, I'm playing 3 Breaker. All right, that means I cannot play Cosmic Book, DD Warrior Lady, or Metaverse. It's very interesting how it's set up. So going through it, limit 1, Jinzo. First off, Spellproof. I know I said in the video Spellproof is unchecked. I was incorrect. Jinzo was a big part of Spellproof, so they get 1 less Jinzo or 2 less Jinzo. I don't think anyone was playing 3, but I could be wrong again. That's fine. I don't think that deck will be insane. I do think Spellproof Armor over time will need an errata to not make all your machines unaffected by spells, because that just seems OP going forward even further into the game. Reinforcements of the army to 1. That's super fantastic. I was shocked, honestly, when we saw recruiters like Rhoda and Foolish Burial come into this game with 20 card decks. I just don't see why we even needed that. I thought the whole like finesse of the fact that you have 20 cards is that, you know, you don't have these recruiters, but you're drawing your cards faster anyways. And then they threw in 3 Rhoda, and I was like, oh my god. So now everything's just like super accessible. Same with Foolish. Foolish, obviously, to a lesser extent, because it wasn't really seeing insane play in this game yet. But I understand that if they're preemptively doing this for future sets, again, it's interesting because this is only for YCS Niagara, so you think they would only limit things that matter now. But some of these hits feel like they're preemptive for future products, which is why it's odd. Like, I feel like if you're implementing this at all, you should just make it a worldwide list. Don't even have it specifically for Niagara. Obviously, you'll take each YCS or each event that you have speed duels at, their results into consideration and adjust for the next event. But I don't know. I just feel like it's a better shakeup if you just release this worldwide and keep it for every event going forward. And then, you know, you do it kind of like regular Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you update it every couple months and call it a day. But anyways, so yeah, reinforcements, really good and really nice to see that at 1. Foolish Burial, again, doesn't really make sense as of yet, but I'm sure it will in the future. Why that matters now, who knows, but we'll just go with it. Zoma the Spirit. Okay, so this was the only card that I considered ever banning in this game, and I know I've had ban list predictions in the past, but like going through this game in general, I would tell you that if you were going to do the old style list, just ban Zoma, and you could have just left the rest of the game where it was at. Now, obviously, that's incorrect. Like, Paranoid definitely needed to get hit. I think Scramble still needed to get hit. But Zoma the Spirit was the one card everyone called out and cried out for that needed to go. And, alright, it's at 1? Sure. So if you're playing it at 1, you can't play Foolish Rhoda or Jinzo. Sure, I guess. I still would love to see this card eventually go at one point. But right now, at least it's hit. At least we can mess around with other things. But at least now every game won't be dictated by your second win con, which is just so oppressively ridiculous, especially for lesser decks. Going into limit 2, Cocoon as the skill. Nice, like to see it, because now anything else on that limit 2 list is only a 1 of in that deck, and everything else is out. So, like we said, Dark Moth can't really function. I mean, it can, but it can't. Dark Moth also used to play more trap-heavy builds, like with Nightmare Wheel and stuff, and if they didn't main it, they sided it. So now if you're playing Cocoon and Paranoid, you cannot play Wheel or Allure, and that seems really, really good. Yeah, you get 1 Zoma still if you're playing that route, but, like, who cares, right? Like, that seems like it really works out. So, to Allure's point, I would say to Paranoid's point, you can play 2 Paranoid and nothing else. I don't know why you're playing Paranoid, though, if you're not playing Cocoon. So I think those are both, like, they both knock each other there. Allure to 2, outside of that, I guess Dragoon Turbo. Sure, you know, whatever. That's fine. Hanger to 2 is the only thing on here that makes no sense to me. Like I said earlier, I think it should have been Scramble. I don't know if putting Scramble to 1 is too oppressive, but putting Scramble to 2 would have been nice. At least so you don't have to deal with 3 of them in a game. I really think Scramble should have been here. Hanger to me doesn't... I don't see a reason to change that. And then Nightmare Wheel. So Burn is obviously less prevalent than it used to be. Now you're going to be on 1 Zoma 2 Nightmare Wheel if you're doing something like that. And if you are playing that specifically, then you can't play the other 4 cards here, but I don't think Burn specifically was playing Allure or Hanger or Paranoid or Cocoon. I know for a fact they weren't. But again, nice way to keep it in check, not to make it overpowered and stuff. And then limit 3s. Break, I think, excluding Metaverse here, I think these 4 cards are the perfect cards for this list. Because it makes you think. It's like, all right, you want to play 3 Breaker? You can't play Warrior Lady, Book of Moon, Cosmic. You want to play 3 Book? You can't do Breaker, Warrior Lady, or Cosmic. You want to do 2 Book and 1 Warrior Lady? Cool, you can't play Breaker or Cosmic. Like, it's just very... All 4 of those cards are like the single best cards to their own arsenal. I would tell you that DD Warrior Lady was the best effect monster in the game. Book of Moon was the best quick play. It was the best back row card in general. That's not Zoma. And Cosmic and Breaker fill the same void as spell and trap removal. So now you can only play 3 of them max between both, or instead of 6. Like, that's really, really clever. And now also with Book of Moon here, you're going to see a lot more Floodgate Trap Hole in the game, because if you're playing Breaker, DD, or Cosmic and you can't play your Book of Moon, then you're going to see Floodgate as its replacement. Yes, it is not nearly the same thing. You can't use it on your turn, but it works in the same sense on the opponent's turn most of the time to summons as you would use Book of Moon. Obviously, Book of Moon's utility is way more important than that and way more oppressive than that. But you know what I'm saying. You get what the apples to oranges argument here is. So Metaverse, just quickly, couldn't tell you. Doesn't make any sense to me. Again, if it's a preemptive hit, I don't know why it's on this list specifically. If they're really, really worried about like an Ancient Gear deck with triple Metaverse and triple Book of Moon, and I just don't see why that was a problem. That wouldn't have been a problem. But anyways, to wrap this up, I'm very impressed with this list, minus Scramble not being here. There's always something you can complain about when you see a new banned or limited list. There's always something that's missing. And if XYZ does end up being the top all best deck in the format, as this states, it's only for Niagara, so they'll probably take those results into consideration going into the next event and then hopefully update from there. But as far as casual play goes, we are going to totally run this list. Like, there's no reason I'm not going to. I know for, I would assume, sanctioned events like OTS tournaments and stuff, they're probably forced to stick to regular, which is kind of unfortunate. I wish Konami would give the option. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not 100% sure if they do give the option or not to run this or not. But I don't know. I think you should have the option, because I think this makes Speed Duels interesting again, and I would 100% play locals again if we are implementing this list going forward. With that, I will leave this video at its point. However, expect to see videos now. As I said, I just wasn't playing because it was very stale format, but with something like this, I like the shake-up, and I think this is the perfect way to bring us all back into the game and definitely make it more interesting for all of us. So, guys, it's been Yugi Bros. I will see you guys in the next video, and I promise this time that the next video will be sooner rather than later because of this list. And if I decide a random hiatus out of nowhere, I will give you a video ahead of time letting you know there's a hiatus coming up, so that no one is ever questioning it ever again. But trust me, we're coming back with this. This list is great. I love this. I can't wait to start testing.